The morning light was soft and golden as Ella stepped into the painting studio, her canvas bag slung over one shoulder, filled with brushes, sketchbooks, and tubes of paint worn soft at the edges. The studio was located on the third floor of an old warehouse near the river, a place that smelled faintly of turpentine, wood shavings, and sunshine. The windows were enormous, stretching nearly from floor to ceiling, and they faced east. Light streamed in through the panes, spilling across the wide planks of the floor, lighting up canvases that leaned against the walls and casting long shadows of the wooden easels that stood like quiet sentinels throughout the room. It was still early. The only sound was the creak of the old floorboards beneath her boots. Ella walked slowly through the space, brushing her fingers along the edges of old paintings, some complete, some abandoned, others still trembling in progress. She found her usual corner by the window, where the light was steady but gentle, and set down her things. Today she had no plan. She unrolled a large sheet of watercolor paper and clipped it to her board. From her bag, she took out a jar of brushes and lined them up like instruments. She opened her sketchbook and flipped through pages filled with ideas, memories, and pieces of past days. Flowers from a walk in the park, the curve of a stranger's smile, the shadow of a lamp post against snow. Ella poured clean water into a glass jar, unwrapped her paints, and took a deep breath. The studio was cool and still. Outside, the city was beginning to stir, but in here, time felt suspended. She dipped a brush into water, then into a pale shade of blue, and made the first stroke. It was soft, barely a whisper. She followed it with another, then another. Faster now, more certain. She wasn't painting a thing, not yet. She was painting a feeling, a question, a rhythm. By 10 a.m., the studio had begun to fill. Other artists arrived, greeting each other in murmurs and waves. Some worked in oil, some in acrylic, a few sculpted clay in the back corner. A woman named June painted enormous abstract murals on raw canvas, always barefoot. A man named Carl painted tiny, exact replicas of postage stamps. Ella nodded to them, exchanging only small smiles. This was a place where silence was not emptiness. It was permission. Permission to create, to think, to be. She took a break around 11:30, stretching her arms and stepping back to look at what had emerged. The painting was soft and strange, a blend of lavender, smoky gray, and ochre gold. Shapes floated at the edges, uncertain, but alive. In the small kitchen tucked in the back of the studio, she made a cup of herbal tea and sat by the open window. From here, she could see the river, the bridge, and a few boats lazily drifting by. Someone played guitar in a nearby building, and the sound drifted up like birdsong. She returned to her canvas and added bolder shapes, dark lines that cut across the calm surface. Contrast, she thought. Shadow and structure. At noon, June offered to share her lunch. A container of couscous salad with roasted vegetables and feta, a slice of apple, and 2 squares of dark chocolate. They sat together on the floor, leaning against the wall, eating slowly. "You ever finish anything?" June asked, her voice light. "Rarely," Ella admitted. "But I think that's okay." June smiled. "Same." The afternoon passed in a sort of golden trance. Ella painted without looking at the clock. She painted with her whole body, leaning forward, stepping back, tilting her head to see differently. Music played softly from a speaker someone had set near the clay table, old jazz and soft piano. The sky outside shifted from pale blue to soft gray, clouds gathering like whispered secrets. Rain tapped lightly against the glass. The smell of it mixed with paint and clay, filling the studio with something ancient and warm. By 4 p.m., Ella had added layers upon layers to the painting. It was now a storm of color and light, wild in some corners and almost invisible in others. She didn't know what it was, but she liked how it made her feel. She cleaned her brushes carefully, dipping them one by one into the jar, then drying them on an old linen cloth. She signed the corner of the paper, not with her name, but with a tiny symbol she always used, a crescent moon and a tiny leaf. The studio began to empty out slowly. June left with a wave. Carl wrapped up his miniature painting in bubble wrap. The guitar music stopped. The light dimmed. Ella lingered. She walked slowly past the easels, pausing to look at what others had left behind. An unfinished face, a spray of color, a broken ceramic bowl glued back together. Before leaving, she stood by the window and watched the rain. The river was darker now, and the boats had vanished. Street lamps flickered on, their reflections stretching across puddles. Back in her flat, she made a light dinner, warm soup and bread, and changed into soft clothes. Her hands still smelled faintly of paint. She sat by her window and opened her sketchbook again, writing in the margin beside a few swirls of color. Today I didn't name the thing I made, but it spoke to me anyway. And when she lay in bed that night, the sound of rain still falling, she felt full, not of words or answers, but of process, of layers, of the quiet joy of simply making something. Tomorrow she would return, and maybe then, the painting would speak again.